If you're even asking that question, it usually means that there's a real tension of some kind behind it. You want to explore healing for sure, but you don't want to compromise your own faith. And this is one of the most serious questions someone can ask before stepping into a Reiki session or perhaps Reiki training. For many people, faith is not a casual interest. It shapes how they understand God, authority, healing, initiation, and of course, spiritual safety. So if Reiki conflicts with that framework, it does matter. The honest answer is this: it depends on what Reiki is understood to be. And that is where the confusion usually begins. Most people in the Reiki world talk about energy. They speak about flow, vibration, life force, and something called the universal energy field. They describe warmth in the hands and movement in the body. If you ask what that energy actually is, though, you rarely get a clear answer. Some call it divine light. Others call it God's unconditional love. Some say it's a subtle bioelectricity. Others refer to it as prana or chi. There are dozens of interpretations of what those sensations mean or what is creating them. There's no shared philosophical framework across modern Reiki culture that defines this word precisely. Religious authorities hear that language and, of course, they respond to it. If Reiki is presented as manipulating an impersonal cosmic force that operates independently of God, then many Christian and Muslim theologians will object immediately. Within Islam, divine sovereignty is absolute. Catholic and Orthodox traditions operate through defined sacramental channels. Jewish theology maintains carefully guarded boundaries. So, if Reiki is framed as accessing a rival spiritual force, conflict is understandable. But there's a deeper question. When a practitioner feels warmth or flow in their hands, are they necessarily interacting with an independent metaphysical substance? Or could something else be happening? What people experience as energy can be understood more carefully as the felt texture of coherence in the body and the nervous system. When awareness and body come into alignment, the nervous system registers that alignment as a sensation. Could be warmth, expansion, vibration, and flow are how the body interprets increased coherence. The experience is real, the interpretation is very variable. Describing that experience as energy is not automatically wrong. The real question is what we mean by that word. So religious objections are often directed at the interpretation and not the experience. This becomes even more important when we talk about the Reiki attunements. Reiki training includes something called an attunement, which is an energetic empowerment designed to establish the student within the Reiki method. This is often described as a process that plugs you into the universal energy field or allows you to access universal energy. And that description creates more problems than it solves. Attunement does not insert something into you. It does not attach anything. It does not implant a spiritual substance. What it establishes is orientation within a structured method. It's like an energetic GPS that orientates you towards coherence. In fact, it stabilizes coherence. So after an attunement, Reiki functions reliably because the practitioner has entered into a stable alignment with the field within which the method operates. That language may still sound quite abstract, so let me be very clear. Nothing is being handed over. Nothing is being possessed. Nothing is being transferred as an object or substance. What changes is your relationship to the practice. From that coherence, healing can occur. Healing in Reiki is not something added to the body. It is what naturally happens when a system moves into alignment. When coherence increases, Whatever is misaligned begins to reorganize, and that reorganization is experienced as healing. None of that requires worship. None of it requires conversion. None of it introduces a new theology. So where does religion draw the line? Religious objections usually focus on three areas: authority, who authorizes this initiation; theology, does Reiki introduce beliefs that conflict with doctrine; and mediation, is healing attributed to something other than God? If Reiki is presented as manipulating a rival force, of course, conflict is likely. If Reiki is understood as participatory alignment within the coherence of creation, then the landscape changes. A theist can understand coherence as existing because creation is sustained by God. A Buddhist may interpret it as non-separation. A secular practitioner may understand it as nervous system regulation. Reiki itself does not require you to choose one of those interpretations. Conflict arises when interpretation is imposed. Now, much of the friction around Reiki does not come from traditional structure. It comes from later New Age additions. Some teachers incorporate spirit guides, angel invocation, ascended masters, or channeled beings of various kinds. Those elements are not required for Reiki to function. They are personal belief layers added by individual teachers and are not intrinsic to the practice of Reiki. When those additions are treated as intrinsic, they create, obviously, immediate religious tension. I once taught a Reiki Level 1 class in Cairo where a woman asked when we would be learning to connect to guardian angels. I explained that we would not be doing that because Reiki does not include angelic communication. Later in the day, she asked when I would be teaching her to connect to an ascended master. I gave her the same answer, and she did not return the second day of training. That moment clarified something important. Many people project metaphysical systems onto Reiki that are not a part of its traditional structure. When those projections are treated as essential or understood as being essential by religious bodies, then that creates unnecessary conflict. I have also worked for over 2 decades with Muslim and Christian students in Egypt, and many reported following their Reiki training something really unexpected. They described experiencing what they understood as a direct and powerful connection to God during prayer, sometimes for the first time in their lives, and they interpreted that entirely within their own religious framework, as it should be. That lived experience does not override institutional caution. It does show that participation in Reiki did not automatically displace devotion. Not everyone responds the same way, of course. One Muslim student loved his Level 1 Reiki training, but later he searched online and encountered references to angels, spirit guides, and other metaphysical additions, and this really disturbed him. He concluded that Reiki must conflict with his religion and prayed to Allah to remove his attunement. A year later, he asked me if he could review a Level 1 Reiki class, which surprised me quite considerably at the time. But during the attunement section, he told me that I would need to reattune him because he had prayed for it to be removed. I asked him to simply raise his hand up to his chest and notice what he felt, and his eyes lit up. The familiar sensation of Reiki flowing was still there. Nothing had been removed, and his fear had been interpretive. Attunements establish orientation, not an object that can be inserted or extracted. So, is Reiki against your religion? The honest answer is that it depends on how Reiki is defined and how your religion defines initiation and authority. If your religious authority prohibits any initiation outside of its own structure, then attunement may cross a boundary for you, of course. If your concern centers on the word energy, it may help to ask whether the objection is to the experience itself or to an interpretation layered on top of it. Some religious authorities and institutions discourage Reiki. That is real. It reflects doctrinal boundaries and concerns about initiation and mediation. Reiki does not function as a religion. It does not require conversion. It does not introduce worship. The central movement in Reiki is not the transfer of energy from one person to another. It is movement into coherence. Healing then follows because coherence and fragmentation cannot remain in tension indefinitely. Whether that sits comfortably within your faith depends on doctrine, interpretation, and conscience, and that decision deserves clarity rather than fear. If this is a real concern for you, take the core question into your own religious framework. Speak to your spiritual advisor if you have one. Reflect on it in prayer. Then decide from clarity, not assumption. Clarity is always better than assumption.